Okay, welcome and thank you for joining this event on digital tools for water resilience. My name is David Johnson. I'm the Managing Director for MacDonald across Asia Pacific. This event has been held as part of COP26 Resilience Hub. This is the first time that's been a dedicated resilience hub that has a virtual and physical space as part of COP. There is a focus on 10 themes, and water is one of them. The hub is led by non-state actors from business, investors, society, academia, cities and regions. And the aim of the hub is to share best practice, collaboration, momentum and new opportunities on adaptation and resilience, and to amplify the messages on resilience and adaptation across COP26. So why is MacDonald involved? Well, we have co-led the development of the resilience water theme alongside Anglian Water. So this is MacDonald's purpose, and our focus is on social outcomes, and also our focus is on excellence and digital innovation. So it's very appropriate, I guess, that we are today talking about the social outcomes agenda, the water theme and digital innovation. Next slide, please, Nikki. So what is water resilience? It's clear from the latest IPCC report that sadly some degree of climate change is irreversible, and changes to the water cycle are profound. This means more floods or droughts and changes in seasons. So building resilience into these water risks is critical to improve social outcomes. So next slide, please, Nikki. So I thought I'd just touch on why digital tools are important for building resilience to water risks. They're based on the best available scientific data and models. Digital tools make vast amounts of complex data available and accessible to everybody. They also enable a consistent approach to risk assessment from local to the global scale. They can easily be updated with new data and understanding, such as updates to climate projections. They also enable us to think outside our traditional silos and explore interdependencies between systems, so systems thinking. And they lead to better and more tailored actions on the ground. So we have some wonderful speakers today who I'll introduce at the beginning of each of their presentations and demonstrations. So we'll start with Nazarene, and I'll just introduce Nazarene as she loads up her presentation. So Nazarene Damazi is currently the Global Smart Water Lead in MacDonald's Digital Ventures team, where she drives innovation and digital delivery through water projects. Nazarene has been instrumental in the development and deployment of MacDonald's digital twin platform, Moata, which has been used on multiple projects to deliver better insights for decision makers in the water sector. So thank you, Nazarene.
Thank you, David. I hope everyone can see my screen. Yell out if you don't. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I will share as an example of how we have used digital tools to increase flood resilience in the city of Bangkok. The project that I'm going to talk about today was delivered this year, so that's very new. And it was delivered as part of the Global Future Cities program supported by the UK Prosperity Fund. before going any further, I thought it would be wise to actually give a simple definition of resilience. Well, I found that resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And essentially, that's what David was saying. We're not talking about how we are going to reduce global warming, but these changes are real, and we really need to adapt to these changes and to the challenges global warming and climate change is bringing. So in this definition, I found it very interesting that we're talking about recovering quickly, and the rapidity of our response is critical. The challenge that we have tried to tackle is around the flooding issues in Bangkok. And I think you will be familiar with some of these images of Bangkok under floods. As soon as 3 weeks ago, Bangkok had a massive flooding and a lot of urban areas were affected. There's actually two types of flooding in Bangkok. The first one, and that's the one that you most likely are aware of, is the overflow of the Khao Phraya River. And you might have gone to Bangkok in the past when travel was possible. Bangkok has the Khao Phraya River flowing through its town, through the city, and the catchment is actually really large. It's extending from the north of Thailand and to Bangkok itself. So when the Khao Phraya River is overflowing, it has a huge it's causing huge damages and significant impacts. However, one of the benefits of these long-range flooding is that they are actually well understood, and we can forecast them very, very well. Most of the time, there's a few days before we actually know that the river is going to overflow. So since it was a little bit too easy, we decided to focus on another type of event. And we've really gone into how we could use digital tools to resolve and to help Bangkok respond to localized and very intense short time scale rain events. So this is the second type of flood events that happens in Bangkok. And these flood events will happen within 1 or 2 hours, and they can cause significant damage. Most of the time, they will result in waterlogged streets, in traffic jams, and in a potential chaos. And this has an impact on economic losses, on health, and obviously you always have the ones who have the least, who actually who are impacted the most. So these events are very challenging because of their very short time span. They are very localized and they are very intense. So we thought that digital tools could really bring a difference in terms of management. At the start of the project, we communicated with Bangkok and we wanted to understand what was existing. And it was great to see that Bangkok actually worked a lot on the management of events and rain events. They've got an operational center that's dedicated to the response to flooding. And they've installed a lot of sensors in the ground to get a better understanding of what's happening during an event. They've got level sensors on the river. They've got level sensors on roads to tell them when the road is actually flooding. They've got a very dense network of rain gauges. They also have hydraulic models that they have been using to understand the extent of floodings. The problem with these data sets was that they were in very different places, in different format. And so the operations center has to go through these different channels, different formats, while an event is happening. Bangkok also invested in 2 rain radars a few years back, and they had the feeling that this information was not suitable for purpose. Essentially, they were thinking that there was something wrong with the hardware of these rain radars, and that they were only as good as giving you an insight in terms of where the rain was located. Well, what we have done is that, oops, sorry, I went a little bit too fast. What we have done is that we have actually helped them through our domain knowledge and our digital expertise to make the most of these data sets. We have brought a central platform where all these different data streams have been consolidated in a common data environment, which means that the information can be consulted and interrogated in real time in a single platform instead of these various locations. We are saving time through this, but we're also providing a real understanding of the situation and the flood situation in Bangkok. We've used our domain expertise. We had the rain radar experts actually advising to put a vertical pointing radar, for example, to help calibrate and cross-calibrate and get a better understanding of the intensity of the rain from the rain radar data. We had hydrologic experts building a 2D model to understand for a study area the extent of the floodplain. And we have used this model to train some kind of artificial intelligence or a machine learning model so that we can predict how much flooding is going to happen in the study area within seconds. And here, this is really critical for these flash floods that we're talking about, because usually we would have a model running in 40 minutes to an hour. We're reducing that to a few seconds, which means that this can be updated more frequently. So now I'm going to actually show you what this looks like and give you a tour of the platform. And that's where technology will be my friend. And can you confirm that you can see the Moata platform, maybe, David?
Not quite.
No? Okay.
It may
We
be
see your
large.
desktop.
I can just see the
It's my desktop.
backdrop.
Okay, great. I might stop sharing and share again. There we go.
Yes, it's working now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So this is Moata, and this is the platform that we have been using. So this platform is our digital solution, and that's been built by Mott MacDonald to enable this kind of connection through different data streams. And here you can see lots of little colorful dots, and that's actually the different type of sensor that we have consolidated in this one single platform. So you can see rain gauges, these little blue dots that give you an insight of how much rain has been how much rain we have had at a specific time. These rain gauges are updated every 5 minutes. So really we get a real insight and a real-time insight into what's happening. We also have some contextual information that has been added, and we're connecting in real time to the ArcGIS platform and geospatial information from Bangkok. So in here, we've got the extent of the urban area. And we've got also all the model information that has been added. It's a little bit slow with Zoom in here, but I'll slow down and you'll be able to see what I can see. And we've got the flood information coming here. That's showing you the extent of floodings for different events. So that's the hydraulic model results that have been run by our hydrologic experts. Okay. Well, if I don't tick it, it's not going to work. Here we go, much better. In addition to that, we have this famous rain radar that we have been running. And here I've got a fictive event because it's not raining in Bangkok right now. Here we go. So in here, you can see that we've got rain in Bangkok, and you can see the location of these events. And you can see that in some places, we often have very intense events in some very localized area, as I was talking about. We can, through the platform, we can enable the analysis and in real time of all these data sets. I can compare what's happening in one area and to another. And I'll just show you a little bit what it looks like. I can see here we've loaded actually 10 years of information, and I can go back to any kind of event. For example, this one, and this will update slowly what the event looked like and the impact that it had. As I said, we also have this for the next 2 hours, and we've got a forecast that's updated every 10 minutes. So this really provides an edge for operators to understand where an event is going to happen and where the operators should be sent on site. It's the real difference between being stuck in a traffic jam on the wrong side of the event and being there and ready and clearing these catch pits and making sure that we are there and communicating with the communities. And I will just show you to finish maybe the outcome of our machine learning model, which is very similar to the hydraulic model that I showed before. But this one is updated every 10 minutes using the rain forecast that we've got. So this is an example, the example that we had for the 2nd of October that I've loaded. And you can see that some roads are being affected and that we're forecasting some surface flooding in some of these areas, for example. We also have an alarm system that is helping with early warnings. These emails are being sent by SMS in Bangkok and being sent by emails and also summarized in this view. So I will try to go back to my presentation. And if you can let me know if you can see this slide or if it's my notes.
Yes, you can see the whole slide.
And okay, perfect. And my notes. Oh, well, I think you'll have to live with my notes.
I don't think it matters. Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So essentially what we have done and the key outcome of these projects were really harnessing existing capabilities and the existing infrastructure that was in place. We didn't add much. We just added a little bit of technology and we're processing 20 billion points every day through this system, which is a big achievement, but we did not add much hardware to that, right? It's still very simple for all Bangkok stakeholders to actually connect to this platform. You just need a laptop, an internet connection, and I'm living in rural New Zealand and it's still working while I have my Zoom meeting, right? Which is what we want to achieve, really getting that available for everyone. In terms of resilience, well, I think through these improved forecasts, we're getting better informed, we're providing better insights into what's happening right now and in the future. This is helping communities, and this will really have an impact in terms of this climate change and these events that are more frequent and very intense. In terms of the opening, opportunities, well, we are scaling to include the full extent of the city, and we had confirmation from Bangkok that they would like us to proceed to the full extent about 2 weeks ago, which is a great thing. David, I'm sure you'll agree with me. But we're also talking about including more data streams, for example, reports from on-site, and we're looking into forms that are providing, you know, so that we can have pictures of what's happening and get a clearer picture on-site as well. And I think it might only be the start, essentially, because we're talking to connect also this data set and the rainfall into different digital twins, what we call digital twins, so these digital representation of a system. And we are starting to talk about how we can integrate that, for example, with the transport models and the transport sensors that Bangkok is investing in. So I'm convinced that we have a bright future ahead of us for Bangkok. And I thank you for your time today. So if you want to have more information about this topic, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazarene. That was a brilliant presentation. I've seen it before, and to have such live information about a real situation that has a huge impact on the community and can be beneficial for social outcomes is really important. So thank you for that. Now, we have time at the end for questions. There's one question in the chat box for you, Nazarene, so I'll give you 40 minutes to think about it, and we'll get to some questions at the end of all the presentations. So I'd just like to introduce Dr. Amjad Amaldi, who is the director of the MENA region, the International Water Management Institute. He is a water systems and solutions specialist with over 25 years of experience in hydrology, water resource assessment, water accounting, water governance, water information management, digital technologies for water management, water policy and planning. Dr. Moody is also the chair of the Water Security Bureau. Before joining the International Water Management Institute, he was the head of Water Resources Section and chief supervising hydrologist at the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. So clearly, Dr. Amjad, you know a lot about water. So welcome, and I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, David, and thanks for that opportunity to talk to you about the application or the project that we did in Egypt. So taking you from Nisreen talk about Bangkok and the flood and the excess of water, we're moving now into the dry and the most dry region, and with the most water scarcity region in the world, which is the MENA region. We focus on Egypt and how the ICT technologies can really help the water resilience with the smallholder farmers. So before I start quickly, so IMI is an international public organization that we work on like three main strategic topics for us, which is the water and food and ecosystem, water and climate change and resilience, and water growth and inclusion. And we have 15 offices around the world. And also in the MENA region, we have 3 offices in the MENA region based in Cairo and also in Beirut. So by looking at the MENA region and that analysis you see in front of you, it really highlights the key challenge in the region. But if we really look at Egypt, which is our case study for today, we see really the key top priority challenge is really the climate change, the vulnerability of the food system, and also the growth population. The arc that you see in your screen, it actually shows the level of implementation of the integrated water management. And Egypt, it's between low to medium of that level of integrated. So how that really affecting the situation? So if we dive in more in Egypt water resources to understand how the system is working. So if we look at the per capita, so the currently level of water use per capita or water allocation per capita, it's almost around 570 cubic meter, which is again below the 1,000 threshold. And if we look with the population growth, we can see that actually again reaching the level of like 360 by 2050. If we look at the whole water system in Egypt, or the total water demand and how they meet that demand. So it's around 114 billion cubic meter. They have around 60 billion cubic meter that coming from the Nile system, around 55.7, and the rest coming from groundwater and desalination. That in total as a 60 billion cubic meter. However, the 54 billion cubic meter come from the agriculture drain, so around 20 billion cubic meter that the Egyptian system, as it's been built, it's actually reuse that by treat and reuse and through mixing as well. But also looking at to meet that demand through the virtual water, which is really all the goods and crops that they are importing to the country. And that's what make the 114 billion cubic meter of water met. However, as we have seen, the COVID started in 2019, and that was again adding a lot of pressure on the Egyptian system, and also in particular the agriculture sector, especially with the extension service. So we have seen like the extension service people are not able to reach the farmer, are not able to communicate with the farmer, are not able really to give them any information that they are really looking for. Plus, of course, the burden on the Egyptian economy by supporting that service as well. So the government was cutting on that service as well as a public service, which again, it's a common practice now in most of the countries, cutting that extension service support from the public service. So that was really required really a quick action. So when we started like late 2019 by understanding the landscape of the country and assess the country in terms of the public domain. So we have seen like a number of initiatives and many ideas for bringing the technology as part of the solutions. However, the buy-in from the public institutions and farmers wasn't there. We have also seen the level of expertise or the lacking of the expertise. Sometimes like public institutions are understaffed or underfunded because especially for the extension service. But also we've seen a donor interest to invest. However, in the meantime, we see like a poor communication as well between intra public administration, and that again adding like constraint for like data exchange and have accessibility of that data or even validate the information that is become available. We also see like sometimes the solutions become like fully sophisticated. So for people that lacking some skills or lacking technical support, sometimes they found it hard to use. And also the cost of the internet, to have access to the internet so you can access whatever service or platform from where you are, especially if we talk about farmers who are on the field and they are really smallholder farmer. They have less than 1 hectare as an ownership that really form the majority of the farmer there. However, when we go beyond the capacity of the country and really focus on the farmers, like in terms of the existing use of the ICT, the need, the perception about the ICT technologies, can they really have access to that information? And if they do, what level of information they need? And also how that interconnected with like the type of governance, the type of water source they have to, the type of crops and the pattern, the level or the size of the farm and the land ownership. And what we found, I just highlight here a few things just to have that picture. So what we found actually, we found again around 60%, 65% from the farmers are about 50 years old. However, the new generation really coming to take ownership of the farming system. When we look at the education level, we see the higher the education come with really the large farmers, and still with the small farmers ownership, like the lack of the education level. But when we look at, really the using the scientific information, and what we found, again, based on the size of the farm, when you go beyond as like a commercial farm, you see like people are investing to use more scientific information and also new technologies. But when you look at the smallholder farmers, they are not really interested in that. However, what we found in the smallholder farmers, they also looking to receive the weather information. They try to access the weather information through the TV or through their mobile, because what we found again, 90% actually using a smartphone, and almost 80% have subscription to the internet. So they are familiar with the internet. They are familiar to use the internet, and that actually make the infrastructure really ready to provide them such type of service. And also we see them, most of them were as a common rely on using the weather data. Of course, in the commercial farmer, they were investing in their own stations for the weather data. The rest just get access to that information through other platforms. So we developed that project with FEO, with local institutions like the Ministry of Agriculture there, and also the startup companies. So we start to bring also the private sector. And we really put the objective of that project is, one is to really digitizing the agriculture extension sector in general. So that was really the main aim or the main objective. But just to start to make that second objective, which really more focus on the smallholder farmers to really improve the water productivity. And the information need to be really accessible and tailored to them at the plot level, because again, you work with this very small scale. And we decided to start with two modules, like the irrigation module and the yield module. So the irrigation module need to give the farmers how much water required to irrigate and when. And that based on the type of crop they have, the irrigation system, the size of their land, the planting time, the type of the water pump they use, and also the type of energy source they use, and of course the soil type. So that was really the key focus. Plus, the second module tell them the expected yield, so they know how much they can earn. We did this project in Lebanon and Egypt, but I will focus only on Egypt for this presentation. So quite quickly on the Egypt agricultural sector, it's really it's one of the key player in the economy picture in Egypt. Egypt, it's a semi-arid, so it's a very dry, very low rainfall per year, almost around 50 millimeter per year. And the whole system really rely on irrigation because they rely on the water from the Nile. Just recently, they start to go beyond and use the ground water in the western side or in Western Sahara side here. But again, the agriculture sector, it's very dominated by the small holder farmer in terms of the land ownership and also the traditional practice. So it's hard to change as well. So we put the project in like 7 steps, and that really to develop that, as we call it, IRWI, which stands for Irrigation Water Information. And IRWI by itself, like it took from us time, IRWI by itself in Arabic means irrigate. So that become again easy for farmers to announce and to use, and to be a word of mouth to change. Use IRWI application in the Arabic way, which again means irrigation or irrigate. So we started by working again with the local partners, which is really the Ministry of Agriculture, and also the startup, which again a local startup as well, where they have access to the technology and understand again the local context. And we started by select and decide like the main crops we are going to start with, and also how we can evaluate the potential use of the Weber database that being developed by FAO, which again give the weather information plus productivity information and ET and actual ET and so on. And that based again on the remote sensing. It's a global data set at 250 meter square, and at the continental, at the country level at 150, and also at some specific region go up to 30 meter by 30 meter. And then we evaluate also the potential use the information of chlorophyll layers to come with the crop health and also to come with the level of crop yield. And work closely with the farmer to co-design that ad and understand their needs. And then we put the prototype for testing with the farmers to get really, again, their inputs into the final product, and then release the final product to them with, again, training to the farmer, so as a direct user, but also train the trainer, which is really the extension service. So the extension service can actually use the app to respond to the farmer questions and also provide some information. And we have developed some indicators for us, really. So at the time we started, that was again during the COVID, where lockdown is there, you are not able to move around, you don't really have that level of accessibility to the field and so on. So that was, again, one of the key constraints. And we set the target to start with 5 crops, 3 governed rates, and train like 90 farmers. And the aim at that time was really 150 farmers. If we are able, by releasing the product, have 150 farmer use the product to evaluate. And I will tell you where we end up. So the way we structure all the partnership here was coming as public institutions, international organizations to bring the science, private startup to bring the know-how in terms of the technology, end user as a farmer really to tell us exactly what they need, how they want to receive that information. And one of the key examples of that, we all talk about crop water requirements and how we can transfer this as cubic meter or millimeter or whatever. But the farmer there was very clear on their demand. They said, I don't care about the number you give me. You just need to tell me when I operate my water pump, how long? 1 hour, 40 minutes, 2 hours. That's the information I need. Don't tell me the quantity of water. I don't care. And the only thing, again, they care about, again, was really the energy cost involved. How much the irrigation cost them, because water is for free. So they only actually pay for the petrol price or the fuel price. So they were really interested to know how much it will cost them and also how long they need to operate their pump for. So they can send the labor to operate that, or they go by themselves to operate that. And the crops we started with, again, was decided by the farmers, as they are really the majority in those 3 governorates, and also by the government as well, in a very nice dialogue discussion as a strategic crops. So we decided to go with the rice, cotton, soybean, maize, potatoes, beetroot, and wheat. And again, it was very clear as a demand from the farmers, don't ask me too much information to use the application. I need very simple application, very low level of information I need to insert, and then you give me the information I want. So again, that was a challenge to meet that requirements. So we make it very simple for them. They only use their phone number as username and password for them to be easy to access, not to forget. And in terms of the information, location of the farm, they can do it manually, or the app can define the location. They only set how large their land, the type of soil, or it's a choice menu. So they only choose based on the color or the picture about the type of different soil, the crop type, again, by picture, because again, we've been working with people not really have that level of education as well. And again, irrigation method, they can choose between flood, drip, sprinkle, but actually the common irrigation system there. The water pump discharge rate, it's always written on their pump, so it's easy, they know the number. And again, we use the language that they actually use in their day-to-day communication. So we change all the scientific term to reflect really the local slang, the local term, that make it easy for them to adapt and use. And of course, they need to insert the planting date when they put their seed. And based on that, all the calculations start to happen. And of course, the soil salinity, if it exists, so we can tell them if they need really to irrigate for reducing salinity. And again, the last irrigation date. And that was again required based on how the irrigation system is organized, because farmers receive the water based on rotation. So some farmers receive it every 10 days, some farmers every 14 days, or every 12 days. So they don't really have access to the water every day. So the application need to calculate for them based on the last irrigation date they did, and on the day they can irrigate on. And as an output, it tells them like the water requirement as hours and frequency, the weather information, of course, the energy requirement, the cost for the irrigation, but also they give them the irrigation record as record, so they can have, because farmers there, they keep like a notebook for every single everything they do on their farm. So the app start to work with them also at the notebook, so they can record irrigation, fertilizers, all the process they do on their farm. And of course, it tells them also the expected yield and the crop health. So after irrigation, they can see how their crop behave on the land. Is it healthy or not? Is it producing more greens or not? The way it's working in terms of the dynamics of the scientific information or the calculations. So it reads the data from the Weber database for actual ET. We use the local key seed that being developed for all the crops. And that again bring that level of assurance and level of accuracy by public institutions, the extension service staff, and also the farmer to see actually that being actually using their local information, not just a global data sets or a remote sensing data. And we tell them, of course, the application calculate the crop water requirement and then transfer that into like an irrigation hours and also the cost for the fuel and the expected yield. So when we release the prototype, we start again going to the farmers, try to work with them and also give them training in the meantime, get their feedback about the prototype. That was including again group, but also one-to-one. So we did a number of one-to-one where we take the application, go with the farmer to their farm, we operate the app, and the app calculate the irrigation hours or minutes, and then we ask the farmer to apply that and then get their feedback. Is that enough, or do you feel that more as you normally do or less? And we collect the feedback that actually build their confidence in the way of the application till them, because again they were that hesitant at the beginning. We coming actually to tell them to use less, and this is the thing again, they don't really take it easy. But when we work with them and show them to what extent the apps do the calculation, provide them with the level of irrigation, and also tell them the health of their crops and the expected yield, that start to build their confidence of the information that the application produce to them. So we released the final product in early 2020, and after 6 months, because it started to come in the media, because I will highlight that later, we haven't done really a campaign to promote. So we only trained 90 farmers, that's all. And we relied really on word of mouth, farmer to talk to farmers. And what we found actually in a number of media, farmers start to give their opinion about the application, and that was really great. So one of those farmers from one of the governorates, again, that governorate we didn't really target at the beginning. So the message was going out to different governorates as well, where he highlight like he has used the application. Most important benefit of the IRWI app for him was to calculate the sufficient period for irrigation for his land. And he also add that irrigation occurs for 75 minutes as estimated by the application, after which he can turn off the water and find out how much water the land has absorbed. Another farmers, again, he was as a retired agriculture engineering, again, he was very happy to see like he was able to control the consumption of the fuel or the petrol needed to irrigate his land. Another, again, farmer in another articles, he was talking about like using the IRWI application, that the children have a role in guiding their farmer parents on how to deal with this model. And that because of the, again, as I mentioned, the level of education between those smallholder farmers, not really high level. So most of them rely on their kids or their children to tell them the information. And that was really a click for us. So what we did after we see that article, we work with a company to put that a comic books for children, which actually tell them about the application, how they can use the application, and how they can transfer that message to their parents. And we start to distribute those as free for kids. And again, that has a good impact on the level of user as well. So we jump at that time, we've been around 300 users. And in 2 months, we jumped to over 1,500 users. So it showed that, again, children in the rural community playing really, or the new generation, playing a major important role when we introduce a new technology or ICT technology solutions. So before I close, so again, we collect different feedback from the farmers, because again, through the application, it allows them to share their feedback with us. And they actually asking for more. So they asking for more crops, not just the 8 crops we currently work with. They asking even for the varieties, because each variety have different needs. So they want to really to be able not just to choose the crop, but also to choose the sub variety for each crop. They also asking for market price information. So they want to have access to the market data, where they can decide how they harvest or when they harvest, and where they can actually sell their products. They also looking for like a heat wave and frost information as well. They also looking for pest outbreak, and also they asking for a live assistant for the crop health. And one of the farmer, I was very surprised. He was saying, I just wanted to take picture by my phone, and you tell me what is how I can treat my plant with this picture, and you need to tell me this information. And of course, the crop price. So as a lesson learned from that project in Egypt, so again, the engagement of the private sector with the public institutions, and taking the inputs from the end user from day one in terms of the design, the development, I think that was again being well in terms of the uptake of the product without any campaign. So we haven't designed a campaign when we started the project, and we didn't plan actually a campaign, but the existing of the end user that actually developed that sense of ownership, and also make them actually feel, oh, we own this and we can promote it by themselves. So, and that's exactly what happened. The public institution as well to be involved and to share information and to feel that level of ownership as well from the beginning. So it's not just an international investment, it's actually we own that product. So they have accepted the ownership as a public institute. They have accepted to continue update that app, so they can continue add more crops as well. And again, that give assurance as well about the information that the app produced. So it was easy for the government to buy into that product. And I remember the Minister of Agriculture who was saying a nice statement like, I like IRWI, I want every farmer, when they walk in the morning, they don't take to their wife, they only talk to IRWI application. And that was really a good message. He would like to turn it to become as a full extension service. So as a take-home message, I think government and public institution, including the private sector, they put a lot of initiatives for technical solutions, but I think that need to become with a better understanding of the diversity of the user and also of the source of water, and really understand the incentive of a change, why the end user here will take that change and apply that change. It was very clear, smallholder farmers are really in a clear need to use the technology, and they are ready to use the technology. They just read that start to give them that start, and then they will take and adapt that. Partnership again between public, private, and research to bring the new science. I think it's very important again, and that allow the know-how, allow the new technology to be available, and that give the flexibility of the platform to be upgraded as we move. And again, any application need to be really a centric user design, get the inputs from day one, and establish that level of ownership. Thank you.
Thanks, Jad. It's an amazing project, and it's fantastic to see you putting technology in the hands and data, live data in the hands of the farmers to, again, bring a fantastic social outcome. And I know what it's like to have my children teach me a little bit about technology as well. So that was an interesting concept. Okay, so our next speaker is Sarah Hayes. So I'll just ask Anta to stop sharing, and Sarah can share her presentation. So I'll just introduce Sarah. So Sarah works with the National Digital Twin Program, Centre for Digital Built Britain, and is leading the Climate Resilience Demonstrator Project, CReDo, a climate change adaptation digital twin to improve resilience across infrastructure networks. Sarah has a background as an economist, but she has worked extensively in data and infrastructure sectors around the world. Sarah is passionate about data sharing, enabling the infrastructure to achieve greater value from data, and she's authored the report, Data is Good for the Public Good. So thank you, Sarah.
Great, thank you, David. And thank you to the other presenters this morning. I've really enjoyed learning about the other digital tools. It's only 10 to 7 in the morning here in the UK, and I feel like I've already learned a lot. And what we're doing here, I think, is we're saying, it's all about giving people more information to enable them to make better decisions. And that's what digital twins are all about, is enabling people to make better decisions. So I work with the Centre for Digital Built Britain, which is a partnership between government and Cambridge University. And as David said, I'm going to talk about our climate resilience demonstrator project, CReDo. So we've been hearing a lot over the last week or so about climate change and how it will cause an increased incidence of extreme weather events, such as flooding. So CReDo, the climate resilience demonstrator project that we're developing, is focused on flooding. It's a climate change adaptation digital twin, looking at the impact of flooding on infrastructure interdependencies across energy, water, and telecoms networks. So we're gathering data across Anglian Water, BT, and UK Power Networks. So we're taking data across the energy, water, and telecoms networks in a region in the UK to be able to set out what the infrastructure system looks like, so that we can see what are the interdependencies across energy, water, and telecoms. And then if there is a really bad flood, how does that flood impact upon those interdependencies? And what are the cascade of effects? So that if the telecoms network goes down first, what does that mean? The lack of communications for, say, getting the energy network or the water network back up and running. The idea is that we'll be able to use this information within this digital twin to help inform decisions in operations and capital planning, so that we can be able to spot the interdependencies in the system, to be able to identify which assets need to be most protected against flooding in the future. So the focus at the moment is very much on future planning and increasing resilience for the future. So the decisions that we make now matter for our levels of resilience in the future. But the idea is that this approach could be developed to incorporate live data so that you could inform a real-time response to extreme weather events. So just to explain a bit more about digital twins and the National Digital Twin Programme, a digital twin is a digital representation of something physical. And that something physical could be in the past, in the present, or the future. And the National Digital Twin isn't a model of everything. It is we say it's an ecosystem of connected digital twins. So what's important here is the data connection between the physical and the digital, but then the connections between different models, so that we can see what the overall system looks like. And so you can have a digital twin of a wind farm or a train station or of a whole transport system. And we see that digital twins sort of sit in this whole cyber physical fabric alongside AI, IoT. So it's where we sort of see a future where everything is connected. And what we're doing with CReDo is that there are two core purposes to CReDo. One is around climate change, because climate change is a systemic challenge, so it needs systems-based solutions, which we see that connected digital twins can enable, because they start to enable us to see the whole system. and also that connected digital twins can increase resilience and enable adaptation. So if we can use digital twins to help us adapt to climate change, then we can also use them to mitigate. And the other core purpose of CReDo is around the development and testing of the information management framework. So what we've been talking about today already is about sharing data, and about data being in different formats and generally quite difficult to share across organisations and across sectors, across countries. What we're looking to do here is to develop a framework which enables data to be shared securely across sectors and across organisations, and of course across borders as well. And that's what the principle behind the information management framework is. It's technical at its core. It's a set of standards for sharing data. So it's of a suitable format to be shared. It's of a suitable quality, but also the softer standards. So the norms, the practices, the data sharing agreements, sort of showing people what the benefits of sharing data across organisations are, and also putting the right security and privacy arrangements in place so that it's possible to share data in a secure way, so that people feel trust in the system of data sharing. So what we're doing with CReDo is we are developing a thin slice of this information management framework, a thin slice of the national digital twin, to show how it's possible to connect digital twins and data sets in this way. And the information management framework approach is a principled and scalable approach. So at the moment, when you want to put together digital twins or data sets, pretty much we have to stitch them together in any which way we can. We have to take data and work through it to put it together. What we're doing with the information management framework approach is developing a principled and scalable approach to doing that. And at the heart of that is information management. So understanding how clean the data is and being able to put the right processes in place to clean the data and to pull it together. So that is what we're developing through CReDo. And we want to be able to share the lessons learned and the approach with other people so that this is an approach that can be scaled. So it can be quite dry talking about data sharing and information management. So what we have done within the programme is we have made a film to be able to tell the story of why we're doing this. Why do we need to share data across sectors and across organisations? So the film Tomorrow Today is available on the Digital Twin Hub. We released it last week for the launch of COP26, and I'll put the link in the chat so that you can watch it later. It's a short film, 6 minutes, and I hope you enjoy it. The key message of the film is that collaboration through connected digital twins is key to tackling climate change. It's not just about the technology, it really is about collaboration and working together to solve our common problems. So in addition to the film, we have also made an app. And the reason for making this app is to be able to explain what CReDo is all about to a more public audience. The data that we've gathered from the asset owners, from the water, the energy and the telecoms company, has to be held securely and confidentially on a platform. In order for us to work with that data, to do the research, to pull it together, to understand the infrastructure interdependencies. So what we have done is we have created a fictional app. So we've created a fictional infrastructure system, and we've created Sunford City to demonstrate what this is all about. So let me just walk you through what happens with the app. Sunford City is about to experience a particularly bad storm. And I'll let you just listen to what happens with that storm and what happens to the infrastructure assets. And then we are asked to play the role of a resilience planner, and we'll have a go at seeing what we can do.
After a series of recent storms, Sunford Park is recovering from localised utility outages. Repairs were ongoing but have now been postponed as Storm Ruby approaches. As the storm hits the city, heavy rainfall causes the river to flood in parts of Sunford Park. Local telecoms are damaged, making reporting and response difficult. Large areas of the city are without power, as distribution and primary substations are damaged. The power outage also brings down a wastewater pumping station, causing sewage to flood into the homes of Sunford residents. As the evening approaches, flood levels begin to recede, and recovery efforts can increase. Several utilities are able to recover using temporary measures. Recovery efforts continue into the morning of the second day. However, by midday, a storm surge combines with high river flows and floods to a new area of the city. This flood brings down a primary substation, causing a general power outage, severe telecoms disruption, and a disrupted freshwater supply. By the end of day 2, Sunford Park Hospital is suffering from communication and water outages, and vulnerable households have been left without services. The storm that hit Sunford City was unprecedented, but a changing climate makes such events more likely. Understanding the interconnected infrastructure system networks that serve our towns and cities can help us prepare for extreme weather and flooding and adapt to climate change. Through CReDo, the National Digital Twin Programme is creating a demonstration of how this is possible.
So you can see at the end of Storm Ruby that Sunford City is in a really bad state. So pretty much all the infrastructure assets are out of service. They have red rings around them. You can see the water network, the power network, and the telecoms network there in pink are out of service. So you are invited in the app to play the role of resilience planner for a water company in Sunford City. And what you can do here is, so you can click on the assets and you can see what they are. You can see that this is a clean water booster pumping station. And you are given a number of options of how you would want to intervene in advance to increase the resilience of Sunford City. But the problem is you only have information about the water network in front of you. So let's say you choose option A, you elect to install a Dura power supply at the wastewater pumping station. But the problem is, because you haven't got visibility of what's going on with the power network or the comms network, you don't know that actually the power network is out. The flood is so bad that the power network is down, and therefore all your efforts to help keep water going and avoid that sewage flooding don't work. So because you can't see what's going on. So you can see in your dashboard down there, you've got half the buildings without water, you've still got your sewage flooding, and you've still got disruption at the hospital. You don't know what's going on with power or telecoms. So your level of resilience is low. So you are then invited to use the connected digital twin. And with the connected digital twin, you can see all the networks and you can see the connections between them. So you can see here, for example, this primary substation in this Sidley area. If you click on that asset, is particularly important because it supplies up to 17 other assets with power. So what you might want to do, one of your options here, is to relocate this power substation to an area outside of the flood zone, which is particularly at risk from this very bad flood. So if you do that, then you can minimize the impact of the storm. So you can see that it's only the area down in the bottom right of the map there that is still without power and communications. And so there's a lot less people affected by the flood, and a lot more people with power and communications, and everyone has running water. But the problem is, of course, that moving a substation is a pretty big thing to do, and it's a really expensive thing to do. So you might then want to investigate what are the other options that are open to me as a resilience planner for this city. So you might want to invest in increasing the resilience of the telecoms and the clean water network. And that's fine, but the problem is, if you've neglected power, then power is so crucial. We know that that substation supplies so many other assets that it's really critical, and it's been affected by the flood. So therefore, you've still got a lot of buildings without power, and you've got a lot of vulnerable people affected. So your level of resilience is still fairly low. You might then want to think about investing in the power and the clean water networks. But of course, Here, you've still got your Sidley power substation, which is particularly badly affected. You've been able to keep the substation in the bottom right of that map going, which is enabling some of the buildings to keep functioning with power. There is some telecoms, but you've pretty much got severe disruption across the city. But you still have running water across the city because your water assets are outside of the flood zone. So you have a more medium level of resilience here. So what this app is really doing is showing you the different options available to you and what the impacts are. And what you get at the end is an overall comparison of the different resilience scores and the cost. But the point of this really is to enable us to start to see that system level view. So it isn't just the case that we would think that the power network should bear the costs of everything to be able to move the power, to move the substation. It really is a question of what level of resilience are consumers willing to pay for, and how does that get paid for? How do we start to sort of look at infrastructure as a system rather than just individual networks? So that's where we're really getting to with CReDo. We have a number of stakeholders working on this project, huge amount of people. It really is a collaborative effort, and that's really my key point here. Is we've got the technology, we've got these applications, but at the end of the day, really, it is about people working together to solve common problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great for somebody to explain clearly what a digital twin is, because I don't think it's well understood everywhere. And also the power of the digital twin if used in the way that you describe. So we'll move on. Our last speaker is Léonie Chatain. Léonie is the European Manager for 427, part of Moody's ESG. Léonie works as a climate product specialist and helps corporations and finance markets understand the impacts of climate change on their activities. So thanks, Léonie.
Thank you very much, David. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this panel today. We've heard some fascinating presentation, and I'm happy to be the last one. So I hope you can see my screen. Today, I'll be talking to you about how climate change, as you know, will bring more frequent and intense water-related risk, namely floods and water stress that we already discussed today, and demonstrate the tool that Moody's ESG offer to identify those different risks. But before I jump into the presentation of today, I wanted to give you a brief introduction on who's Moody's ESG and where we sit within the Moody's Corporation. So Moody's ESG is a business unit of Moody's Corporation, and we provide data and analytics which helps leaders to assess ESG and climate risk and opportunities. And so the idea is really for us to support organizations to make more sustainable decisions by anticipating emerging risk and invest into opportunities. And as part of COP26, we've launched the Moody's on Climate campaign, and the idea is for us to support the collective efforts in better understanding what climate change means for the global society and share expertise on how to assess, to measure, and to manage climate risk. So over the last years, Moody's developed a deep expertise in water-related risk, thanks to a few partnerships and acquisitions. So here on my slide, I have the example of RMS, but also Fathom, which are experts in water-related risk, and that were acquired or developed a partnership thanks to Moody's. And today I wanted to discuss three main water-related risks that we cover within our analysis. The first one is the risk of floods that we've discussed extensively today, thanks to the example of Sarah and Nazreen, and we'll probably keep on discussing in the future, as our data show that by 2040, 41% of the global population will be exposed to damaging floods. So by floods, we mean fluvial and pluvial flooding, and we integrate both historical data and forward-looking information from climate models on precipitation changes. We also have data on coastal flooding with sea level rise indicator that is looking at both the incremental change in sea level, but also how that might translate into an increase in frequency of coastal flooding. And lastly, I touched on water stress as climate change and climate models project an increase in drought-like patterns in the future, leading to major scary consequences that we've also discussed today with the example of the agriculture in Egypt. And our data shows on agriculture is that over 1/3 of today's agricultural area will likely be subject to high water stress with all the consequences that you can imagine. And so to cover and to illustrate my presentation, I'll be using 2 case studies. The first one will be on the exposure of a corporation to the risk of floods, and the corporation will be Moody's. And the second one will be looking at the most regional level and looking at water stress risk in Asia. So if I start with the risk of floods, it's of course a key topic. Again, we've talked about that a few for the last 2 presentations. And it's something that is on top of mind for everybody. In Europe, where I'm talking from, we had some deadly floods in July, which show really the needs for adaptation. And the first step for adaptation is, of course, understanding its exposure and so identifying the risk. And that's what the tool that we've developed is aiming at. So the tool is called Climate on Demand, and it's looking at providing the ability to analyze virtually any location across the world in a really limited time frame to the different impact of climate change, including the risk of floods. So compared to the tool that was presented by Nasreen and Dr. Amgad, it's not on real-time tool, but it's really looking at projection information for the decade 2030, 2040. So I'm going to change my screen share so I can show you the tool. Can I get a confirmation that you can see the application?
Yes. Yes, Leonie, it's coming through.
Perfect. So as I was mentioning, the idea of this platform here is to assess any location across the world to different impact of climate change, including floods and sea level rise. And the input that we are asking for are pretty simple. So just the name of an asset, the location of the address by providing the street address or the latitude and the longitude if the data is available, the country, and then the activity, because we do some kind of sensitivity adjustment depending on the activity type of a given asset, meaning that if you are a data center, you will be more exposed to water stress because you consume more water than a simple office. So here, I usually ask for a specific asset, but we are running a little bit out of time. So I just use one that I have in my software, which is the Moody's office in Shenzhen. So I've entered the address here, the country, which is China, and then I can select the activity office. And I then ask the application to map the location, so to find the latitude and the longitude, and I can check on the map here that's indeed the right location. And then I can click on calculate the score, and it's usually a few seconds depending on my Wi-Fi connection, so that you can see the physical climate risk assessment for that specific asset, including the risk, as I was mentioning, of floods and sea level rise, but we also have information on hurricane and typhoon, water stress, and wildfires. So what this tool allows, again, is for a quick analysis, a quick screening, and show the risk level for each risk hazard. So you have different risk level ranging from none, low, medium, high, and red flag. And so we see here that for this specific asset, and I haven't showed that one for nothing, is that it has a red flag exposure to the risk of floods. And the interesting thing here is that I can open the indicator and look at the sub-indicator, so all the different data that is feeding our scores to end up with this red flag information. And so what we see here, and we are able to understand, is what is driving the risk between an increase in terms of flood frequency, an increase in terms of flood severity, changing in precipitation patterns with rainfall intensity, very wet days. And we get both a score from 0 to 100, where 100 represents the highest level of exposure, as well as the raw data coming directly from the IPCC models or the other environmental sources that we are using. And for each asset, we have the ability to download a PDF scorecard, which is basically providing the same data points, but with some methodological information. That's what we can do for one single asset. But as I was mentioning, really the goal of this tool is to be able to screen a large portfolio of assets at once And so we have the ability to upload a portfolio. It's a pretty simple process, and then to view the results in this view portfolio section. So I have here, again, as I was mentioning, the exposure of the 74 offices of Moody's across the world to the different impact of climate change. So the data is exactly the same as the one we've seen for a single asset, but it's just different way to visualize information at a larger scale level. So we have maximum, mean, and minimum score for each climate hazard. We also have this risk distribution table that allows us to understand that Moody's offices, 11% of the Moody's offices have a high exposure to the risk of floods, and 8% of them have a really red flag exposure to the risk of floods. And I'm then able to dig and understand where are located those 11 assets and check the results at asset level, with each line here representing an asset. If I remove the filter, I have again my 74 assets, and I'm able to filter to check the one that have the highest exposure to the risk of floods. And in that case, I can see the Zurich and the Frankfurt office showing up as really highly exposed, and I can click on them to get the underlying value. And the last visualization I wanted to show you on this app is the map. Again, it's the same data, just a different way to visualize it, with all the location, all the offices in Moody's in the world. And we have the ability, where I'll zoom on Europe, as we've seen that a flood is where flood is the more preeminent. And so I can select the risk of floods, and again, check the one, my hotspot basically in my list of assets, and the ones that are the most exposed. And the idea is really to be able to screen large volume of assets and identify the one for which we should focus our mitigation effort on, because they represent the highest level of exposure. So if I go back to my slides, and just a second, this was showing basically how to assess the risk at asset level, but as Sarah really well mentioned and described, climate change is not just about a single location, but it's really about the systemic risk and understanding the risk at a wider scale. And that's what I wanted to discuss with my second case study on water stress in Asia. And so here I'm featuring our data at sub-sovereign level. So it's subnational entities that we've scored again for all of our climate hazards, including water stress, and to understand which area are the most exposed. And so in Asia, we see that the risk is prevalent in South and Southeast Asia, and climate change will bring additional pressure to a water network which already suffer from water scarcity and mismanagement. And so this data here shows a specific focus on India and Pakistan and the neighboring countries. And the color represent the level of risk and the level of exposure to water stress. And this analysis is based on a population-weighted approach, meaning that the area appearing has really high exposure represent the area where water stress risk is important, but also there is a lot of population living there, and therefore a lot of potential human impact. So of course, we've already discussed that thanks to the presentation on Egypt, but water stress can bring a decrease in agricultural yields, economic production. It's also an issue in India around energy security, with the lack of water to cool down the thermal power plants. And of course, it can have damaging impact for human health. But this example also shows us something that is interesting, that we see that one of the areas that appears highly exposed is the Indus River. And this is shared between Pakistan and India. And so it shows an example of the geopolitical tension that can be raised from water stress. And we've seen that across the world. And again, this is a good example because Pakistan is depending a lot on the Indus River for its water supply. And the river is partly controlled by India, generating tension between two countries. And if we take a more sectoral view of the risk, we have this graph here from a report from Moody's Investor Services, so the credit rating agency part of Moody's, that shows that the sector that have the highest exposure to water stress are also the ones that are the most sensitive to water stress and have the higher level of water consumption. And so here we see building and materials, coal mining, mining and metals, retail and apparel, so all those sectors that consume a lot of water. And in this same report, Moody's Investor Services highlight that climate change will make water management a more pertinent risk. And that's a really important key takeaway that I wanted to highlight, and that's a nice transition to my conclusion here, so I can leave some time for the Q&A time. It is that we really want to highlight the fact that it's important to use climate data to make informative decisions and foster global resilience to climate change impact. And so we are constantly learning and making progress on understanding what climate change means, how to project the future and what it will look like. And although nobody has a crystal ball and there is still a lot of uncertainties around the climate science, but also the political decisions that are made or not made today, there is still good data out there, and this data must be used to develop risk identification, implement risk mitigation measures, because we cannot manage what we cannot measure. And so we need to use climate data to foster resilience. Thank you very much, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
So thank you, Léonie. It's a great presentation, and again, an amazing use of data, and the way it's presented, it really makes it easy for non-technical people to use it. So we've got a few minutes for questions. Léonie, we might just start with you while you're on a roll, and just might ask you about, do you have any examples of where it's been used to change an organisation's approach to resilience, where this tool's specifically been used?
Yes, definitely. So I think on our side, most of the users of this application are real estate investors and more generally financial institutions and large banks. And it has been used by a lot of real estate investors who want to understand the exposure of their different assets and build mitigation measures. Most of the time, they are invested across hundreds, thousands of assets around the world. And so what they need with that tool is to identify which assets they should focus on. So because it's not always effective for them to look at each asset individually. And so they want this tool, this large screening tool, to check the specific asset they should focus on and then develop mitigation measures. So we've seen a lot of real estate investors developing mitigation measures, and that helps them not only understand the exposure at the asset level, but also understand how that might affect the communities around them. Because obviously, even if your asset is not flooded, but the whole city around you is flooded, that will represent an issue for your own operation and for the market around you. And so it's helping them to understand not only these asset-specific risks, but also the wider area.
Thanks, Léonie. So we might go back to Nazarene and just ask, there was a question, I think, about whether your tool and the solution have been used anywhere else in the world, and has it been tested anywhere else?
Unmute myself. Thanks for the question. So yes, this tool have actually been used in other places. So we're in New Zealand. We've worked a lot with Auckland Council, Wellington Water as well, which are the two of the main cities in New Zealand. And we've, as part of we've also rolled this out, especially the machine learning using these hydraulic models. We've rolled this out in a catchment in Auckland that's very different to the one in Bangkok, a lot steeper and rural as well. So we just wanted to make sure that the methodology could be used because that's something that hasn't been done before, and we've had great results as well. So yeah, we're now in conversations. If anyone is interested to get our systems implemented in other places so that it can be trialed, that would be a great opportunity, obviously.
Sorry, Nazarene, I was just saying well done on the little sales pitch there. So we need to get these products out there and used globally. So Amjad, I was just wondering about your app. I mean, it's amazing to put such power in the hands of the farmers. What do you think the future of it is, and will it be supported, and can it be developed in other places globally?
Yeah, thanks, David, for that. I think the early application had the capacity now to extend, and we are happy because we have secured a collaboration now for the next 5 years with the Ministry of Agriculture to continue develop the airway application to become as an extension service with fund from the Dutch government and also in partnership with FCO. So the application will be expanding over the next 5 years to become as a full extension service. Plus also through that fund from the Dutch government, we're actually taking that platform for another 10 countries in the region, in the MENA region here, over the coming 5 years as well. So that will provide most of the farmers in the MENA region with the accessibility of the data and also information to help them really to tackle the challenge with the water shortage.
Sarah, again, a great presentation, and the CReDo project is very interesting. And as I said before, I love the way it simplifies the concept of the digital twin. And we have many infrastructure clients who don't necessarily understand what a digital twin is all about and the benefits that can come from the digital twin. I just wonder how, what's the future of your project, CReDo, and can other people get involved, both within the UK and outside the UK?
Yeah, so the future of CReDo, I hope, is that it goes on and on in whatever form. We're hoping that the asset owners will see value in this and want to take this program forward. And because it's been funded by UK Research and Innovation to get it going, but we hope that we'll be able to, that the asset owners will fund it in the future, that other asset owners from other sectors will want to get involved, and also we'll be able to spread it out to other regions, because what we're doing is we're sharing all the lessons learned on the Digital Twin Hub. So I think in terms of people getting involved, you know, at the very lightest level, it's sort of sharing this message about collaboration is key to tackling climate change through connected digital twins, and sharing the app and the film. Those are the sort of very simple things. In a more sort of let's get it, you know, really involved, I think, you know, the starting point is talking to other people, isn't it? Talking to other asset owners, identifying a common problem. So I think for other asset owners to be, there's a clear need for energy, water, telecoms and transport to work together to be able to tackle these problems. So I think it's talking to other asset owners. I think it's for suppliers to start to initiate the conversation. Often this needs a convener. Collaboration isn't easy, and it needs someone to convene this, to kickstart it.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. We've got a couple more minutes left. I thought it might be interesting just to talk about the agility of these apps and applications, and might ask you what it's like to, for example, for Léonie, as we get more and more data globally coming into these applications, how easy is it for you to update the application, absorb that data, and adjust the predictions that you've shown us today?
Yes, that's a great question, especially with the update of the climate models from the IPCC and the CMAP 5 to CMAP 6 version. So it's not easy, it's not difficult in theory, right? You just need, our tool only works and mostly work with big data. So we just need to change the plug, if I can say. What's more difficult is, well, to get the right data at the right resolution and do the right Q&A on that. So I would say that that's what takes, of course, the longest, not that much the more informatic and technical side, but really making sure that what we are publishing in our application makes sense. And if I take the example of the CMAP 6 models, well, for now, we only have the high resolution view, and we don't have a lot of downscaled models that prepare us to have a resolution that is slightly lower and takes into account an environmental context. So for now, the models are mostly at a scale of 100 by 100 kilometers, and we are currently using models at 25 by 25 kilometers. So that's just an example of why it might take some time because we need to wait for the research to be ready to publish additional data and not just the large climate model that we are using. So short in theory, but always longer in practice.
Thanks, Léonie. So we're just coming to the end of our session. I'd just like to thank everybody. Nikki's in the background driving things. We had a few technical issues, but as always, they don't really matter because the content has just been amazing, and what people are doing in the digital space to help resolve issues like water resilience is very, very important. You know, we can all take action, but we can also use our digital capability to drive action. So I'd like to thank all the speakers. It's amazing, really. You're all from different parts of the world, but you're all driving for the same outcome, which I absolutely love. So in a way, you're all connected for the, using the digital, as I said, the digital innovations that you all bring to create a better future for all of us. So I'd like to thank everyone, and again, thank Nikki and her team for organising this session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.